Abraham. He is a credible historical figure. His name is Abraham. He was born in about 2215 BC and died in approximately 2040 BC. Abraham has a wife. Her name is Sarai. God has changed his name from Abram to Abraham, Genesis 17:5, meaning the father of many nations in Hebrew. His wife Sarai has then become the mother of many nations. Abraham is the common patriarch and a great prophet of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, who holds a high position of respect in three major religions in the world. Abraham has moved many times in his life. He could be described as rootless and restless. Abraham's family has finally settled in Canaan. His original name was Abram. God has given him a new name, Abraham. Abram and his family originally lived in Ur, Mesopotamia, downstream of the two river basins, located at the site of modern Tel El Mukayyar in southern Iraq. Abram's family migrated to Haran, now Upper Euphrates River. His father Terah died in Haran. When Abraham was 75, he was called by God and inspired by God. Abraham took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all of their possessions, and those who became members of their household in Haran. They left Ur of Mesopotamia. He led the tribe across the Arabian desert to the promised land in Palestine. God revealed to Abram, calling him to this place, the land of Canaan. Having settled here, the entire tribe was able to thrive. Abram traveled through the land as far as the sacred place at Shechem, at the Oak of Moreh, Genesis 12:6. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I give this land to your descendants." So Abram built an altar there to the Lord, who appeared to him, Genesis 12:17, and called upon the name of the Lord, Genesis 12:8. Abraham had worked as a businessman, financier, farms owner, and more in his life, and was an amateur military strategist. In order to rescue the kidnapped family member, Lot, his nephew, Abraham led servants to launch a risky attack against the coalition of 4 kings of the north, and surprisingly gained a great victory. Abraham had always faithfully believed in God. He was already in his 70s, but still had no child after many years of marriage. God said that he would give Abraham a large number of children and become a great nation. God revealed this promise to him, and he trusted God. At that time, he was already 75 years old. After 10 years of living in Canaan, Abraham was 85 years old, and Sarai still wasn't able to become pregnant. Later, Abraham's wife, Sarai, tried to enable Abraham to have an heir. On a long trip heading towards Egypt, before they could actually settle down, which took a few years to go as far as Egypt, Sarai offered her Egyptian maidservant, Hagar, to Abraham with the intention that she would bear him a son. After Hagar found that she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress, Sarai. She began to turn against Sarai in all matters. Sarai responded by mistreating Hagar, and Hagar fled into the wilderness. She was the sister wife, a servant girl of the head wife, not really in a most pleasant position for a girl. She walked into the wilderness, ran away from home. The Lord requested her to return home, so Hagar returned to Abraham. The Egyptian maiden gave birth to his first son, named Ishmael. Finally, when Abraham was 99 years old, Sarai was pregnant. When Abraham was 100 years old, Sarai gave birth to a son named Isaac. Later, when Ishmael was teasing the young Isaac, teasing him, maybe bullying him a bit, Sarai saw that happened. She requested Abraham to send away Hagar and Ishmael. This might have been an excuse. It's possible that the root cause was about the inheritance. Because the net worth of Abraham's properties was very large, The number of servants was around a few hundreds. That was a sizable tribe, and Abraham was regarded as the leader of this big tribe. The conflicts between the wives could not be reconciled, maybe for the sake of purity of the nation. Abraham sent his foreign wife Hagar and his little boy to the east of his hometown, near today's Mecca of Saudi Arabia. Early that morning, Abraham took some food with a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. Abraham then returned to Canaan afterwards. Hagar and Ishmael wanted to return to Hagar's hometown, Egypt, but lost their way and used up all the water. The young Ishmael scraped the desert land with his feet, where water suddenly sprang out, which became the world-famous holy spring in Mecca, the Zamzam well. Now it is a tourist attraction. So Hagar and Ishmael started living in the wilderness. They prospered and thrived. Ishmael later fathered 12 sons and became the leader of the 12 tribes, equivalent to the patriarch nowadays. The descendants believe that Ishmael is the ancestor of the Arabs. The Arabs acknowledge this. When Isaac, the second son of Abraham, son of his first wife Sarai, grew up to his teen years, one day God tested Abraham's faith. At that time he was well over 100 years old, only left with one son, the apple of his eye, most beloved one of all. "Abraham," God called, "take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, who you love so much. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering." In those days, lambs were used when they made offerings to God, and now Abraham was told to sacrifice his son as an offering. With total faith in God, Abraham was willing to endure this cruel destiny. He took with him his son and tools for the offering, heading out to the Moriah Mountains for the sacrificing ritual. The boy did not know that he was about to be sacrificed. The boy asked his father, "But where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" When the father and son arrived on the mountain, Abraham prepared everything, built an altar, and arranged the wood on it. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!" "Don't lay a hand on the boy," the angel said. "Do not hurt him in any way. For now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son." He had no reluctance to sacrifice. This event was a test to him from God, a test that went beyond mortal maximums. Since then, God has appointed Abraham as the deputy of the world. Even the birth of Jesus was Abraham's descendant of the 42nd generation. Jesus was also his descendant. That came after 40 and more generations. When Abraham was 160 years old, Isaac fathered a pair of twin sons. They were Esau and Jacob. Jacob fathered another 12 sons. Later, Isaac became the ancestor of the Jewish people. From here, you can see that God's promise to Abraham was fulfilled. Abraham was given a tremendous amount of heirs. Abraham's many descendants established many countries on the land where they lived, and Abraham truly became the father of many nations. Sarai died at the age of 127. Abraham bought a land and buried his first wife Sarai. Then Abraham took another wife. At that time, Abraham was about 140 years old. He was more than 10 years older than Sarai. Abraham took another wife named Keturah. Keturah gave birth to 6 sons. Abraham gave his properties to Isaac. He transferred his title of the tribes to Isaac, his eldest son. Abraham also shared his valuables with Keturah's children. While he was still alive, he gave the 6 sons part of his belongings and sent them away from Isaac to the east. Among Keturah's children, Midian was the descendant of Hur and Abraham. Abraham died at the age of 175, and was buried in the cave of Machpelah by his sons Isaac and Ishmael, where he and his wife Sarai were buried together. Abraham was bestowed with many honorable titles, such as the father of faith, the servant of God, the prophet of God, the friend of God, the father of the Jews, and also the father of the Arabs. From the perspectives of many Christians, Abraham is the most devout Christian, as well as the most devoted Islamist, and even more so, a most faithful Jewish believer. The Islamists believe that Abraham is the most religious Islamist. At the same time, the Jewish people also think that he is the most loyal Jewish man. Abraham was exceptionally faithful to God. Being chosen by God made him the happiest person on earth. In Christian faith, this is a conventional idea. For being chosen, or selected by God, it is a great blessing to be chosen as a companion of God. In those days, it wasn't too unusual that God spoke directly to people. Of course, it is totally different now. In Genesis of the Old Testament of the Bible and in the Quran, both have the same record that Isaac, son of Abraham's first wife, is the ancestor of the Jewish nation, and that Ishmael, son of Abraham's other wife, is the ancestor of the Arab nation. Among all denominations of Christianity, Abraham is a model of all faiths. His willingness to obey God by sacrificing his only son Isaac prophesied a future event that God sacrifices his own son, Jesus. Jesus is also being offered as a sacrifice, an atonement for mankind. In Islam, Abraham was also an exemplary model of faith. He obeyed God and sent away his son Ishmael with a bag of food. In fact, this is what God arranged for him to do. Abraham and people in the past were not like us. We follow our own ideas for everything. People in the past used to listen to God for everything, but now most people don't believe in God. When God spoke, could the people really hear God? People like them could really hear God. God could directly tell them what they should do. Because Abraham offered his son to God, our world exists in the way it does now. All in all, Abraham's life was a life that strictly followed God's instructions. Under the guidance of God, Abraham finally obtained a happy life. This was a very brief introduction to Abraham. It wasn't meant to cover too much information. Abraham's story is very complicated. We are only doing a general introduction. In both the Old Testament of Judaism and the Quran of Islam, Abraham is a figure that is often mentioned. In the eyes of the Westerners, Abraham is equivalent to Emperor Huang of China. Every Chinese person knows that they are descendants of Emperor Yan and Emperor Huang. As for the Westerners, they acknowledge that they are descendants of Abraham. There were many stories in Abraham's life that have been recorded. In our Chinese history, there is a certain record of the Emperor Huang. The Emperor Huang reigned and led our Chinese people for 100 years. In the past, people lived a very long life, but in today's world, people living up to 170 years old is almost impossible. Judaism believes that Moses was the greatest prophet of all. He was the highest leader of the Jewish people. He was a warrior, politician, poet, moralist, historian, and the Hebrew legislator. In the Old Testament, Moses was mentioned about 170 times. In the New Testament, Moses was mentioned more than 70 times. Surely Moses was a pivotal figure in the history of the Israelis and was revered by the Jewish people. Moses was the king of the Jews, equivalent to their leader. Just like the Chinese emperors, when they led the people, many miracles had happened, but we don't have many records in this regard. According to the Bible, God spoke directly to Moses. He was told by God to lead the Hebrew people to leave Egypt for the promised land of God, where it is now the area of Israel, Canaan, and Palestine. That would liberate the Hebrew people from slavery. After Abraham took the Hebrew people to settle in the land of Canaan, they were later invaded by others and got captured to Egypt to become slaves. Jewish people were very intelligent, very good at doing business, but they were not good at war, maybe due to the limited size of their tribe. They were all taken away for slavery after being defeated. Moses was most well known in the period around 1300 BC. Based on the timing of Pharaoh Ramesses II, who was mentioned in the Bible Exodus, his death was dated 1237 BC. After 1,874 years, around 610 BC, Muhammad, the founder of Islam, recognized Moses as the true prophet. With the spread of Islam, Moses had become a highly respected figure throughout the Islamic world, including Egypt. By 500 AD, his fame and prestige spread with Christianity throughout many parts of Europe. Today, more than 3,000 years after his death, Moses is still highly respected by Jews, Christians, and even some atheists. Moses was a real historical person. Moses' life could be divided into 3 stages, each of which was 40 years. The first stage was in Egypt. Moses' father was Amram, and his mother's name was Jochebed. Both of them were from the Levi's family. According to the Bible, after Jewish people migrated to Egypt, they had worked hard and also were known for their good trading skills. They had accumulated a lot of wealth. In addition to that, when Joseph, a Jewish man, was honored as the chief minister of Egypt, a rapid growth of the Jewish population had occurred. That had aroused dissatisfaction and fear from the governors. The governors in the past were all pharaohs. In those days, politics and religion were one. Therefore, Pharaoh ordered to kill all of the newborn sons of the Jews. After Moses was born, his mother wanted to save his life. She first hid the baby Moses for a few days. A month or two later, she got a wicker basket for him and caulked it with asphalt and tar to waterproof the wood. She put the baby therein and placed the basket in the weeds by the river. It floated on the water and was later found by the Egyptian princess who came to bathe in the river. The princess rescued baby Moses and raised him as her own son. When the child was hidden in the weeds by the river, Moses' mother asked the family to watch from a distance. After the Egyptian princess picked up Moses from the river, his family came forward and said, "Does this child need a wet nurse?" The Egyptian princess said, "Sure, it's nice to have a wet nurse. I'll find a wet nurse for you." Then Moses' biological mother was called over. Thereafter, Moses' real mother became Moses' wet nurse. Until he had grown older, he was sent to Pharaoh's daughter. Pharaoh's daughter adopted Moses. When Moses grew a little bit older, about 1 or 2 years later, Moses was sent to be with the princess. Pharaoh's daughter is the princess. Moses grew up in his mother's arms. His mother took care of him personally, and possibly for quite a few years. Growing up in his mother's bosom, Moses got to learn about God at his mother's knees. He heard God's words through his mother's voice. He developed his firm roots in faith as he witnessed his mother's dedication to God. That has made the foundation of his life of greatness. Because his mother was a Jewish person, it inculcated his belief in God. This is very important for a little child. It may be that his wet nurse, his real mother, took care of him before he was 5 or 6 years old. God's arrangements are often unpredictable but wonderful. Moses' role was too important. God knew that if Moses was to carry out a very difficult and formidable task, he needed a high level of education. First, God masterly coordinated the reunion of Moses and his mother, so that young Moses could learn about his mother's religion and his roots. Jewish people believe in God, their religion, their Lord. Moses was given the opportunity to understand God's will for the Israelites and to witness the abuse his fellow men were going through. Moses had strengthened his integrity and loyalty to his people. Later, God arranged for Moses to have the second stage of education. He was brought into the palace. Because the princess adopted him, she picked him up from the riverbank. Moses was able to receive the education of the royal family. Egypt was a great civilization at the time. Moses was taught by many highly knowledgeable teachers and was guided in all kinds of developments. This facilitated the blossoming of Moses' talents, and he gained all the knowledge available in Egypt. As Apostle Stephen said, Moses learned all the knowledge of the Egyptians. He was very talented, very intelligent, and knowledgeable. This was God's wonderful arrangement and coordination. He prepared Moses to become the leader of the people of Israel. When Moses was young, before he was 40, he was staying in the palace. What about after 40, the second stage of life? The second 40 years in Midian. When Moses was a grown man, he was a member of the royal palace. He once saw an Egyptian soldier beating a Jewish man on the street. Influenced by his true identity, he stepped forward and beat the Egyptian soldier. He killed the Egyptian soldier by accident. He wouldn't have dared to make a move if he was an ordinary Jew, if he was not the son of the princess. After he killed the soldier, he had to run away from the Pharaoh's pursuit. He escaped to Midian, otherwise he could have been sentenced to death from killing a soldier. The people of Midian are also descendants of Abraham. The children that were born of Abraham's third wife lived here in Midian. They were relatives of each other, and they accepted Moses. Moses also married Zipporah, the daughter of the priest, and together they had a son. This happened before Moses turned 40. He felt in his heart that God was calling him to visit his Israelite brothers. Based on his faith, he refused to call himself a son of the Pharaoh's daughter after Moses was a grown man. He did not claim that he was the son of the princess in front of people. He would rather suffer together with his fellow men of God. He returned to the Jews when he was 40 years old. He did not want to live for the temporary joy in sin. And for this reason, he went outside on the streets. He left the palace. Then subsequently he encountered this incident and accidentally murdered someone. The reason why Moses was so faithful to God was due to the influence from his parents. God said to all mothers, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will reward you with wages." Every child is entrusted to the parents from God, for them to nurture and educate. From 1 to 7 years old, the religious teachings a child receives will mark a lifelong influence. A folk proverb says, "Teach a child the right path. Even in his old age he will not deviate." That's what we say. You can tell one's future by what they are like at the age of 7. It is very important to be influenced by parents before the age of 7. The influence can be understood as a blessing of positive energy. Language, of course, is one example. Parents' thoughts and emotions can basically position a child's life. Infants can be empowered by the energy emanating from the parents. Before the age of 7, the environment for growth is very important. Regarding Moses, he still wanted to return to his roots when he was a grown man. If he had experienced only the life of royalty, it would be impossible for him to find his way back to his roots. Before Moses was 7, he was brought up by his biological mother. He then stayed with a princess in the palace after the age of 7. While Moses fled to Midian and stayed with the Israeli people, his work was to tend to the sheep. There were a few decades when he hadn't done much. He was already in his 40s, now tending sheep and living with his own people. He was originally a highly educated person, and as he aged, his people trusted him more. People respected him because he was intelligent and wise. By the age of 80, tending sheep for the past few decades and with not much happening, it was in his last stage of life, the last 40 years, when the most important stage of his life came. Those years prior to the stage was to prepare him. After the age of 80, now came the third 40 years of Moses. He was called, chosen, by God to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, to cross the Red Sea, and to return to Canaan. One day, God told Moses to revisit Egypt. He had to bring the Jewish people out of slavery in Egypt and return to their homeland. Moses was at the age of 80. For people in ancient times, this task was extremely difficult, if not impossible. The road was challenging and the trip was too far away to travel to. So this was indeed a very difficult journey. Without God's help, someone might even die on the road and not make the way back home. Most people wouldn't even dare to think about it. Moses met God in the burning bush. God had spoken to him directly. One day in Mount Sinai, Moses was tending to the flock of his father-in-law. God appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. The bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses thought, I must go over and see this marvelous sight. God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he, Moses, said, Here I am. Moses wanted to come closer. Then God said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He also said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, God of all 3 original generations. God assured Moses and said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings. Israel is a nation of faith. Then God told Moses that he was appointed to liberate the people of Israel from the bondage of slavery. At that time, the Israelites had been bullied into slavery. They could not defeat the oppression. You see, the same thing happened during World War II. Jews were arbitrarily slaughtered by the Germans. More than 6 million Jews were killed. Our master has seen that photo. The sight of piles of dead bodies was really horrific. Jewish people are like that. They don't know how to revolt. They are very good at business, trading, but they don't seem to be very combative. But they are okay now. They seem very powerful now. The entire Middle Easterners can't defeat them, and they have the America's support. Facing this challenge, Moses saw that this task was beyond his abilities. He was already 80 years old. He wouldn't dare to think about it. To take away the slaves from the Egyptians? Impossible, he decided. The old Moses used many excuses to shirk the task. Moses said to God, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? But God said, Certainly, I will be with you. Moses found another excuse. Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What should I tell them? Moses had to convince the Israelites, but how could he explain all these? You have to come with me, to your homeland. He didn't have a proper proposal for them. God revealed his name in a synonymous way. God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. I am who I am means the original existence, always and forever. This name that represents God is self-existing and self-sufficient. Moses countered that if he had told the Israelites that God had sent him to save them from Egypt, they would not believe it. In response, God showed him 3 miracles. God told Moses to throw the staff on the ground. The staff turned into a snake immediately. Furthermore, God said to Moses, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So he put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous, white as snow. And if they still don't believe these 2 miracles or listen to you, take some water from the Nile River and pour it on the ground. The water you take from the Nile will turn into blood on the ground. Manifesting miracles, performing magic. Even with the powerful evidence that God was with him, Moses was still reluctant to accept this task. Moses pleaded with God, "O Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been, and I'm not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I get tongue-tied, and my words get tangled." God told Moses, "Now go. I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say." No matter how God promised to help him, Moses still pleaded God to send someone else. Moses persistently refused. He just didn't want to do it. On one hand, God was angry with him. God was getting impatient with him now, even getting mad. But on the other hand, God felt pity for him. So God appointed Aaron, Moses' brother, to serve as Moses' spokesperson. However, Moses was still to be the authoritative source of the communication with God. God instructed Aaron was still in Egypt, to go up the mountain, where God appeared to Moses in the burning bush, and meet up with his brother Moses there. Moses told Aaron everything that had happened. After returning to Egypt together, they gathered the elders and explained everything. When Moses and Aaron performed miracles in front of the people, they believed that the 2 leaders were sent by God to save them from their suffering. Being a slave is a very painful thing. Shortly after Moses returned to Egypt, accompanied by Aaron, he went to Pharaoh and relayed God's request. "Let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Moses was speaking on behalf of Jehovah, the God in whom Jewish people believe. Pharaoh rejected the request, saying that he had never heard of Moses' God. The king of Egypt took it as a big insult to the Pharaoh, for Moses and Aaron claimed that they were messengers of God. As punishment, not only did he reject Moses' demands, he also increased the Hebrews' workloads. Originally, the grass used by the Hebrews to make bricks was supplied by the Egyptians. Now Hebrews had to pick grass by themselves, but the production number of the bricks could not be lessened. The Hebrews were angry and turned to Moses to complain about the suffering he brought in. "You 2 brothers have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials. We were doing okay, and now there is more suffering." Moses was confused too. His mission was to save the Hebrews from difficulties, bring them back to the promised land for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses complained to God. When the people protested to him, he protested to God. "Why have you brought all this trouble on your own people, Lord?" People had to work harder. They were in even more pain. God told Moses to go to the Pharaoh again to repeat the request, and declare to Pharaoh that he would be punished if he disagreed with releasing the Hebrews. Moses revisited Pharaoh's palace, reiterating demand for letting go of the Israelites. Moses turned Aaron's staff into a snake, trying to scare the Pharaoh. However, the Egyptian magician could do the same trick, but the snake transformed from Aaron's staff devoured the magician's snake. Yes, swallowed the magician's snake. Pharaoh was very stubborn, fearless and ignorant, not willing to accept Moses' request. As Moses performed the 9 plagues one after one in Egypt, God's almighty power was revealed, and Pharaoh yielded. Moses performed the plague of frogs. Countless frogs ate up the crops. The plague of flies. Everywhere was full of flies. Plague of hail. Thunderstorm of hail. Plague of locusts. The insect locust. And the plague of darkness. There was no sun for 3 days. The Pharaoh was thrown into a panic. Once moderated, he agreed to Moses' request. But after the plague was gone, Pharaoh hardened his heart again. He withdrew his grant to Israelites' freedom. The first 9 disasters severely damaged the Egyptian land, but the Israelites had not yet been released, until the 10th plague. This was the most terrible disaster. God told Moses that there would be another plague coming to the Egyptians. All the firstborn sons will die in every family in Egypt, from the oldest son of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the oldest son of his lowliest servant's girl who grinds the flour. Even the firstborn of all the livestock will die. All the firstborn in all households, if they were males, all of them had to die. In addition, God assured Moses that the disaster would not hurt any of the Hebrews. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between the Egyptians and the Israelites. God guided Israelites through Moses and Aaron to quickly prepare the departure from Egypt. Because of the plagues, Egyptians' families really did see death. The Israelites asked the Egyptians for gold and silver, and then, in the middle of the night, God sent out the messengers of death to kill all the firstborns of the Egyptians. From the presbyters to housemaids, their eldest sons were all struck and killed. Even the firstborn who was captured in the prison was killed. When Pharaoh saw what had happened, he ordered Moses and the Israelites to leave Egypt immediately. He agreed to let them go. Fearing the Hebrew God, the Egyptians promised the Israelites gold, silver, and clothing, as the Israelites demanded. The Hebrews didn't have to leave empty-handed. They got gold, silver, and clothing with them. According to the Bible Exodus, Moses was told by God to lead the Hebrews to migrate from Egypt. As he led the Hebrews through the Red Sea, God parted the water and exposed a path of land. The water was parted. Water walled up on their left and right sides. The Hebrews crossed the river as if they were walking on the land. When the Egyptian soldiers came after them and entered the path on the riverbed, God closed up the water walls. The water came back together, filled up to the top, and drowned the soldiers. The Hebrews escaped successfully. You see, the Pharaoh still sent soldiers to chase after them. Moses led the Israelites forward from the Red Sea. After entering the desert, he walked for 3 days in the wilderness of Shur and found no water. This was the beginning of the real challenge to Moses. In the desert, the Israelites struggled to survive. They encountered food and water shortages, internal discord, wars with invaders. They blamed Moses. Although the Israelites had seen God's miracles, manifesting the great divine power, their trust in God was not strong. The Israelites complained endlessly when they met challenges. They kept trying Moses' patience. Also, God always satisfied their requests and supplied everything they needed. When they came to Marah, they couldn't drink the water because it tasted bitter. In the desert, Moses cried out to Jehovah, God. God showed him a tree that was to be thrown into the water. Then the water was made sweet. The taste of the water was originally bitter. God changed it to sweet using his power. Through these experiences, Moses had become the unifying force and the great spiritual leader. There, in Marah, the Lord made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he tested them. God said, If you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. The departure from Egypt is known as the focal point of the Old Testament. Exodus in the Old Testament is the most important piece of Jewish history. This is the major event of the Old Testament and a critical moment for Israel's development into a nation. Today, Jewish people still look back on this historic moment. They see in the history that God saved Israel, just like Christians see Jesus' crucifixion as a great salvation. Moses has become their leader. God gave the laws, the 10 Commandments, to Moses, and told Moses to convey them to the people. The laws' perfection stood the test of time, but shortly after Moses received the laws, his people committed sins that enraged Moses. He smashed the stone upon which the laws were engraved. They broke the law, which was actually too demanding for them at the time. The Jewish people of that time couldn't comply. Later, Moses got a rewritten version on a second stone, which was never broken and was stored in the Ark of the Covenant. The Jewish people of today regard the Ark of the Covenant as the most sacred treasure, and it has always been the holy Ark of God that they are willing to protect it at the cost of their lives. Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Oh, what a terrible sin these people have committed! They have made gods of gold for themselves. Please forgive their sin, but if you won't, then remove my name from the book in which you have written the names of your people." The Lord answered, "It is those who have sinned against me whose names I will remove from my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I told you about. Remember that my angel will guide you. But the time is coming when I will punish these people for their sin. Whoever has sinned will be prosecuted." The Israelites have such difficult lives. They don't even understand why they have to suffer so much. On Mount Sinai, Moses received the 10 Commandments set by God. They are also called the 10 Commandments of Moses. Those are the laws we have just mentioned. God brought the Israelites out from the land of slavery in Egypt and gave out the 10 Commandments of Moses. They are as follow. 1. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. 2. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. 3. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord, your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name, just as Buddhists would not use the name of Buddha arbitrarily. The name of Buddha is allowed to be mentioned, but not in any profane or disrespectful way. 4. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. After 6 days of work, the 7th day is a Sabbath day of solemn rest. Sabbath is not to create any karma. On the 7th day, everyone must worship and repent, and stop all the works. After every 6 days, everyone should take a rest on the 7th day to stop the cyclings of karma. 5. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. If you wish for the everlasting generations to come, you must respect your parents. 6. You shall not murder. 7. You shall not commit adultery. 8. You shall not steal. 9. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Do not give false statements, which means don't lie. 10. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Not desiring others' possessions is more than not stealing. Stealing is a behavior that shows on the surface. The last commandment is very important, not to be greedy, not even the thought of it. It is similar to the Buddhist the 10 good deeds. No greed, no hatred, no delusion, etc., etc. These 10 commandments are very important for the Jewish people. They believe that these commandments were given to them by God. They must have followed them in order to have their nations flourish from generations to generations. People in the past didn't understand. They thought it was enough just by listening to God. They didn't know about the karmic relation of cause and effect. You have to believe in God. If you do this, God will bless you. You will be blessed. Your children and grandchildren will be blessed. They earned God's blessings by believing. They were not ready to look into the karmic relationship of cause and effect. When Moses died, he was 120 years old. Before his death, his eyes were not weak. His vitality had not diminished. Moses, the servant of God, died in the land of Moab. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. Joshua, the son of Nun, became Moses' heir. When Moses laid hands on Joshua, as commanded by God, Joshua was filled with the spirit of wisdom. Joshua was commissioned to lead the people. The whole community of Israel obeyed him as their new authority. There has been no prophet like Moses ever since. Prophets have supernatural power that is believed to be given by God. Moses was a great prophet. He was face to face with God. He was sent to Egypt by God and performed miracles in front of the Pharaoh and the Egyptian officials. He also stood in front of Israelites and manifested many great wonders and miracles. Israelites called him king. At that time there were no such things as politics or economics. It was a primitive society. Like the elders, they were called elders and chiefs simultaneously. As Moses stood on Mount Nebo, he was experiencing the greatest disappointment and also the greatest victory in his heart. Disappointed because his request to enter the promised land was denied. In the end, he did not arrive in Canaan. He died in the place of Moab. Victory because he was honored with a burial specifically arranged by God. God himself buried Moses. He humbly accepted God's harsh training, and he demonstrated characteristics of greatness. He did not blame the Israelites when a golden statue of the false god was built. He rather took full responsibility as his own failure. Although God deprived him of access to the land of Canaan, he surrendered humbly and focused on caring for his successor Joshua. Moses also had his own sons, but he did not hand over his leadership to any of his. Rather, he gave it to one who was capable of handling it. Joshua was the best man. Moses was a great prophet. He also had the most similarities to Jesus Christ. Moses to the Jewish people is like Jesus to Christians. A great portion of the Old Testament was written by Moses himself. He was also a prophet and showed a lot of divine, supernatural powers. Moses was very humble. He said that he was blessed and guided by God. Moses indeed was very incredible and unique. He was magical. There are many messages of God recorded in the Old Testament, Judaism. However, most people nowadays do not comprehend the Old Testament properly. Just like many of us Buddhists don't understand the Buddhist scriptures well enough. Buddhists in modern times do not even understand the true meaning of karmic relationships of cause and effect. Most became superstitious. Only a few Buddhists have a proper view of it. To be honest, Buddhists today are not as good as Christians. There are hundreds of millions of Buddhists. Not sure. Maybe more than 1 billion. Among so many Buddhists, I think only less than 1% have the wisdom and are able to practice detachment and compassionate bodhicitta. The vast majority of Buddhists are not even as good as Christians. Even Christians despise them. They worship idols and are superstitious. The Old Testament said, "Do not worship idols." Why? Idol worshipping belongs to the times before the Old Testament, when people believed in superstitions and even black magic. Worshipping and praying to the inanimate objects might bring some favorable results because the idols are considered inhabited by spirits, deities, or ghosts. But these kinds of beings are from the lower realms and would not have any true wisdom. However, the God in whom Moses believed was the God of Abraham. The teachings in their heritage are full of wisdom, and therefore they led noble lives. I think that these great prophets are emanations of enlightened beings such as Buddha and Bodhisattvas. The spirits from the lower realms would not teach you the Ten Commandments. The fact that Christianity has been prospering far and wide is a validation of its divine source. Later, after Jesus was born, he reinterpreted the Old Testament. Jesus also added more teachings, which became the New Testament. About interpreting the Old Testament, I think maybe only Moses is able to give a proper and thorough understanding. Among the Jewish teachers, they always held conflicting opinions in interpreting the Old Testament. Although they had the same religion and believed in the same God, whether they were elders or laymen, their understandings of the Old Testament conflicted with each other. Therefore, when Jesus reinterpreted the Old Testament in order to bring out the true meaning of God's teachings, he was not welcomed by the people. They did not accept him and also wanted to crucify him. Apparently, these all happened within God's planning. Tomorrow, we will continue with more intriguing teaching. Today, I have briefed you with some general ideas of Moses and Judaism. The core of the Old Testament of Judaism is the Ten Commandments. At the time in that part of the world, this noble teaching surpassed all other primitive idol-worshipping practices. It was the most superior one with high morality. This comes close to the 5 precepts and the 10 good deeds, which are the core values in Buddhism. No wonder Christianity, with such profound quality, spread to cover the entire Western world. Moreover, the Old Testament is totally accepted by the Christians. What we call Christianity today is a branch of Judaism. Both religions believe in the same God. This is the end of our lesson for today.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can't go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change. We all a part of God's great big family. And the truth, you know, love is all